All right, guys, I've got a new video today, and the title of this video is Five Traits of a Good Psychiatrist. So, I've been a practicing psychiatrist for about 7 years now, and unfortunately, I've heard some horror stories from my patients about how bad some psychiatrists are, and at the same time, how good some psychiatrists have been. But unfortunately, more often than not, I hear more of the bad stories than the good stories, and which is I think is common just because people tend to remember the bad stories more than or the bad experiences more than the good experiences that they have. But I was just kind of thinking lately about what makes up a good psychiatrist, and so I've come up with five different traits that I thought would be a useful indicator for that. And so here it is. All right, so we're just gonna start with number one, which is that a good psychiatrist will more often than not see you as a person than as mere symptoms. All right, so it's part of our job. We have to interview the patients and sort of understand what symptoms that they have. But overall, a psychiatrist should view their patients as people, right? And of course, that sounds so basic, but unfortunately, that doesn't always happen in our field. Sometimes I think some psychiatrists will see their patients as simply just a collection of symptoms, right? They just want to extract these symptoms that they need to know so that they can just medicate them, right? And get rid of them because symptoms are bad, right? So unfortunately, some people will they're just not interested in their patients as people. But I think a good psychiatrist will ask good questions. I think they will show interest in their patients by asking things like their hobbies, their dreams, and more clinically related, their childhood, right? And what they do for a living. Um, and these are important because not only does it show that the psychiatrist thinks you are a person and not just a mere collection of symptoms, but also because these are very useful clinical data, right? So if you actually understand someone's childhood, their upbringing, their occupation, their current relationship status, where they live, and what they do on the weekend for a hobby and for fun, it actually gives you the data points that actually helps you to create the holistic picture of your patient. And so more comprehensive data you have, the better of uh, the more of an accurate diagnosis and the treatment you can come up with. So that's super important, and this is where we begin as a good psychiatrist, who takes genuine interest in their patients. Number two, it is a psychiatrist who frequently expresses empathy. So we learned this in medical school. So it's not just psychiatrists who are supposed to express empathy, it's all physicians or even all healthcare professionals. We're supposed to express empathy. But even so, more importantly, in psychiatry, in the field of psychiatry, or even in the field of mental health, um, if the provider doesn't really know how to express their empathy, or they're not really able to express empathy, they're in a wrong profession, right? Because just the nature of the mental health is that there's a lot of sensitive information that the patients have to disclose. And oftentimes it's very painful experiences, things like childhood trauma, things like, sexual assault, things like betrayal from their spouse. And if it's not met with that warm, fuzzy empathy or empathetic expressions from the other end, you're just going to feel like you're sitting in a room all by yourself, even though there is someone else that's in the room. But that person is basically a code, examiner that just wants to extract the information out of you, right? And so a psychiatrist who can express empathy and do it rightly and at the appropriate times is, I think, super important. And without that, I don't think you can really have a good report with your psychiatrist. And studies have shown that over and over again that if you don't have a good report, it doesn't matter what they do for you. you're not going to have a good outcome. So, if you have a good relationship with a psychiatrist, because they express frequent empathy for you, you are more likely to have a good outcome. So that's number two. A good psychiatrist will have the ability and the heart to express empathy as you share your story. Number three, a good psychiatrist will let you be in control and will not take away control from you. Let me explain what I mean by that. Okay. So for some people, seeing a psychiatrist is like the last resort, right? Because you may feel like you're giving up control over your life to someone that you don't really know, and you don't even know if this person truly has your best interest in mind. And so uh, to share and to make yourself so vulnerable to another human being, and that experience itself is very frightening, and it's very scary, and it would be scary for me as well, if I were to see a psychiatrist myself. And so a good psychiatrist will understand this dynamic, and they know what it means to sit on the other side of the desk, and so they will not only understand that, but they will also hand you back the control, right, that you've given to them, by seeing them as a patient. So what I mean by that is that, kind of think of it like this. Let's say that you and your friend are going to some place that you don't know how to get there, but your friend does. Okay, but you're driving your car, your friend is sitting in the passenger seat. And because you don't know how to get there, your friend is basically giving you the directions that you need. Let's say that, on the way there, you change your mind. You don't like where you're going, you don't like this neighborhood that you're driving in, and so you decide to change your mind, and you decide to go back home. Can your friend say anything to that? Maybe your friend is disappointed, but ultimately you're in control. It's your car, so therefore you have the right to not go to this place. Just like that, mental health is is something that you control, right? It's not anything that, there's nothing that you need to follow, right? Basically, the psychiatrist functions as a trusted advisor. And so, if you like where you're going, then you can continue to go down that path. But if you decide to change your mind, or if you just kind of don't feel comfortable with what's going on in your treatment plan, or what the psychiatrist is doing for you, then you can simply walk away or drive away, right? And so, a good psychiatrist will know their place as that trusted friend or that trusted advisor, that expert advisor, and they will not try to control. They will not try to be behind the wheels and take control over that, right? And so that's really important, because again, mental health, or seeing a mental health provider is often very scary, and that experience itself it can be very frightening, because you're in a way you are handing over some control over to somebody else. But a good psychiatrist will not take advantage of that. They will respect your autonomy, and they will help you in that process. Okay, so that was number three. A good psychiatrist will not only let you be in control, and but they will not take away that from you. All right, number four. A good psychiatrist will be open to your feedback and suggestions. So this is kind of related to the point that I made before. In fact, I would say this is a good test to see if your psychiatrist respects your autonomy and respects the fact that you should be in control. Okay. Um, so, for example, like they will be willing to hear what you have to say about how the medication is or is not working, right? So, they will not dismiss your any sort of negative feedback, but they will value your feedback, and they will make the necessary adjustments based on your feedback. And because as psychiatrists, all of our data actually come from you, right? It is whatever you report that make up the majority of our data points. And so if a psychiatrist doesn't pay attention to your feedback at all, then it's almost like the psychiatrist is going blind in terms of their treatment plan. And so that's something that you should remember, that a good psychiatrist will actually appreciate your feedback. And it is actually quite common that some people will come to a psychiatrist with a specific treatment plan in mind, like a specific medication that they heard about, that their relative is on or their friend is on, and that have some good outcome. Um, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good. But if your psychiatrist is not even willing to consider that as a potential option, then you just need to move on and find somebody else, right? Find somebody else who doesn't let their ego get in the way of treating their patients. All right, so that was number 4. A good psychiatrist will be open to your feedback and your suggestions. Finally, but last but not least, number 5, a good psychiatrist is well-rounded and is integrative in their approach. A good psychiatrist is well-rounded and integrative in their approach. So by now, it is pretty clear that psychiatric meds should not be the first line treatment for most mental illnesses. In severe cases like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, psych meds definitely play a role more often than not. Actually, I would say most of the times they play a role, and they kind of have to because of the severity of the illnesses. Even though I do have some patients that I was able to wean off, some patients who have schizophrenia that I was able to actually taper off of their meds, and they're medication free. But in severe, but in most cases, when it comes to mild to moderate depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, ADHD, there are many other non-medication options that can be as effective, if not more effective, than being on a medication. And in fact, it's more sustainable because there's no side effects that you have to worry about. You don't have to keep hiking the doses. So therefore, these non-medication options are better, right? So if you find someone whose toolbox only composes of medications, then you may want to think again about whether this psychiatrist is the right psychiatrist for you. Okay, um, because there are again, because of where our field is going and because of just the popular demand of non-psychiatric medications, and other research that is happening, there really are so many other non-medication options that should be afforded to you as an option. Okay, so as psychiatrists, we have a bad rap of pushing meds on people, and but fortunately, our field of psychiatry is becoming more holistic and more integrative. So find someone whose philosophy is treating the whole person and with every effective means available. All right, so that was number 5. A good psychiatrist is well-rounded and integrative in their approach. Well, I hope this video was useful for you and give you some ideas about what a good psychiatrist may look like. Ideally, hopefully you never have to see one, but if you do, then you know the kind that you should be looking for. So hopefully you found this helpful, and I will see you guys again until next time.